I recently relocated, leaving behind the place I used to call home. My mother-in-law cheerfully said over the phone, "It must be hard to be without a home." I could barely muster a response as she wished me well in my new place. I simply replied, "Thank you, but please keep your distance from my home, especially since you're going through a divorce." She promptly ended the call. As I stood at the airport, I felt not anger but a sense of liberation and triumph, experiencing a weight lifting from my shoulders as I headed back to my own space. I'm Alice. Shortly after my marriage to Arthur, he had to work overseas, which meant we were thrust into a long-distance relationship. Having been together for 6 years before tying the knot, we had built a solid foundation of trust that helped me cope during his absence. I wasn't concerned about infidelity, I simply wanted him to stay safe. Our lives were mostly tranquil, even though loneliness occasionally seeped in. Things took a turn for the worse when my mother-in-law decided to move into our house while Arthur was away. Her choice stemmed from her own past trauma. My father-in-law had left her after being unfaithful. Fearing a repeat of history with Arthur, she inserted herself into our home to keep tabs on me, declaring, "I'll be watching you, Alice, to ensure you don't stray." Her presence became an oppressive force in my daily life, pushing me to the brink. I reached out to Arthur for help, but despite his repeated requests for her to leave, she remained obstinate. "Arthur puts too much faith in you, Alice, you're going to cheat," she would unfoundedly accuse, making my days unbearable. No matter my efforts to prove my loyalty, her doubts and scrutiny only intensified. She suspected me of being unfaithful, refusing to cook dinner for me and instead using the food in the fridge for her own meals, leaving nothing for me. She never contributed to grocery shopping, always consuming what I had purchased. This meant I often returned home to find nothing to eat. I expressed my frustrations, but my mother-in-law seemed indifferent. "You're probably out with your boyfriend since you're cheating," she would accuse, which upset me deeply. Even when I returned late from work and started cooking, she would make a scene. "You must be cheating if you come home at this hour, leaving your mother-in-law all alone," she would say, during my busy work periods, when I often got home late. Her accusations of infidelity stressed me to the point of feeling unwell. "Please, just leave. I'm not cheating. I love Arthur," I begged her. Arthur, overwhelmed with work and unable to come back to the U.S., did his best to convince his mother to move out, but she only grew more stubborn. "So you really want me to leave? You must be cheating," she concluded. At that moment, all I could do was sigh in resignation. On one of my days off, I decided to meet up with a friend to escape the tension. As expected, my mother-in-law accused me of cheating once again and attempted to follow me in a clumsy attempt to spy. She hid behind lampposts and the brick wall of her house, trying to stay out of sight. I simply ignored her antics and continued my plans at the cafe. When I met my friend Sandra, who I've known since college, I noticed sudden flashes of light. My mother-in-law was snapping pictures of us. Sandra, noticing the strange behavior, looked confused and asked, "What's going on?" Determined to confront the situation, she stood up, ready to address my mother-in-law directly, asking, "Should I say something to her?" I quickly urged her to sit back down. "No, please don't," I replied. Sandra, with her pixie haircut and trendy streetwear, had an androgynous allure. I joked that my mother-in-law might mistake her for a man, which sent Sandra into fits of laughter, finding humor in the ridiculousness of it all. Leaning in, she pretended to hold my hand, further teasing my mother-in-law. Each time she took a picture, her excitement was evident, and she seemed as if she'd uncovered something scandalous. It was so absurd that I couldn't help but laugh alongside Sandra. The entire ordeal turned into a comedic spectacle. After enduring my mother-in-law's antics, I felt a wave of relief and went shopping with Sandra. We enjoyed our time until we parted ways. True to form, my mother-in-law trailed me on the way home, ducking behind lampposts and walls just as before. At times, I amused myself by playing a brief game of red light, green light with her, watching her scurry to hide each time. It was comical to engage in her strange game, knowing how foolish she was to think I hadn't noticed her following me. Upon arriving home and taking off my shoes, she approached me, flushed with excitement, holding up a disposable camera. "Alice, I finally have proof of your cheating. I'm going to send these to Arthur, so brace yourself." "Oh really? Good luck with that," I replied nonchalantly, which she didn't take well. She buzzed around me like an irritable child, insisting, "Are you really okay with this? It's proof of infidelity. Your face and his are clear in the pictures. I calmly responded each time, that's fine. It was unfortunate that Sandra's appearance sometimes led to confusion about her gender, but Arthur knew her well from before we were married. Therefore, even if my mother-in-law sent him a photo of me with Sandra, he would easily recognize her as just a friend. Despite my mother-in-law's ridiculous behavior, I had to go on a business trip overseas. It was disappointing not to see Arthur since he was in another country, but the trip was necessary. I informed my mother-in-law about my travel plans without asking for her opinion. However, she seemed to think my business trip was a romantic getaway. As I prepared to leave, she smirked and said, "It'll be a big issue if you come back pregnant from your romantic escape. Arthur hasn't seen you in a while, so pretending the baby is his won't be easy." Her unseemly thoughts made any argument pointless. I nonchalantly dismissed her comment. "It's merely a business trip, not some romantic escape," I replied before leaving. The trip turned out to be quite hectic, and the days sped by. By the time I returned to the U.S., I was completely drained, as was my boss, who had accompanied me. Before heading home, I decided to grab some duty-free treats and took a moment to rest on a bench. That's when my phone buzzed. It was Sandra, and she had some surprising news. "Hey, Alice, welcome back. I have something important to tell you. Your mother-in-law showed up at my workplace." I was taken aback. Sandra's family business wasn't a place where just anyone could drop by, and the thought of my mother-in-law visiting there irritated me. Sandra explained how she handled the situation and wondered if she might have overstepped. I chuckled and reassured her, "No, I think you handled it perfectly." Just as I was about to leave, my phone rang again. This time, it was my mother-in-law. "Alice, I assume you're back from your trip now. Did you enjoy your little affair?" she taunted. I corrected her. It wasn't an affair, and honestly, I didn't particularly enjoy it. It was for work. "Well, I've already sent Arthur the incriminating photos," she said smugly. I replied with an indifferent, "Huh," which seemed to please her. She continued talking, seemingly oblivious to my lack of enthusiasm. "By the way, I've moved, so your house is no longer there. I sold it, and I imagine you're struggling without a place to return to. Just hang in there," she said cheerfully. I responded with a dull as she laughed with glee. "Enjoy your life in your new home," she added. "Thanks, and please don't ever come back to our house. After all, you're about to get divorced." Once she ended the call, I lingered in the airport for a moment before feeling an overwhelming sense of relief wash over me. I didn't feel anger. Instead, I felt victorious. I couldn't help but pump my fist and set off for home with a spring in my step. I was returning to the very house my mother-in-law claimed to have sold. Perhaps she had even taken some of the furniture, but whatever was gone, I considered it a parting gift. Her antics seemed less burdensome now, and I was ready to move forward with a lighter heart. Without delay, I called a locksmith to change the front door lock, ensuring my mother-in-law wouldn't be able to re-enter. Once that was sorted, I collapsed onto the couch, reveling in the newfound freedom of having the place all to myself. In a fit of joy, I raised my fist in the air and shouted, "I did it!" The next day, my phone rang. It was my mother-in-law, her voice frazzled and shaky. "Alice, something terrible has happened." I couldn't resist a hint of sarcasm as I asked, "What's wrong now?" "I thought I sold the house, but it turns out I didn't. I borrowed money without realizing it, and now debt collectors are coming. It's terrifying," she stuttered. "That sounds frightening," I replied, genuine concern slipping into my tone. Apparently, the company she had mistakenly visited, thinking it was related to Sandra's family, was actually a disreputable operation posing as a real estate agency but engaged in loan sharking. Sandra had informed me they repeatedly warned her that the house couldn't be sold, since the property was under Arthur's name. She couldn't have sold it on her own. After being turned away by multiple real estate agencies, she had desperately ended up at the shady firm owned by Sandra's parents, where they had her sign a promissory note without her fully grasping the implications. The document left her burdened with an overwhelming debt, requiring daily repayments of $1,500. While she managed to scrape together just enough to fend off the debt collectors for the day, her options for sustaining the payments had run dry. For years, she would come to me, pleading, "Please, Alice, you have to assist me. The debt collectors have been hounding me since morning." My mother-in-law was besieged by constant visits from these collectors. "It's terrifying. I can't get a good night's sleep, and I'm nearly out of money. I used the borrowed funds to purchase a new house, so I don't have any savings left, she lamented. Her next request caught me off guard. Could you possibly transfer $21,000 to my account each week until I'm able to clear the debt? Then she seemed to doubt her own plan. Do you really think there will ever come a day when we can settle this company's debt? Even if we pooled my income with Arthur's, we couldn't possibly generate that much every week. With sympathy but firmness, I responded, I'm sorry, but your only real option is to work hard and earn the money yourself. Isn't there a job out there where you can make $1,500 a day? Half jokingly, I added, why not reach out to the company you borrowed from? Perhaps they can assist you in finding a decent job. Confused yet optimistic, my mother-in-law replied, really? I'll go check it out, and quickly hung up. I sighed, realizing there was no stopping her now. Later, Sandra informed me that my mother-in-law had indeed arrived at the company, insisting, I have no choice but to find work, because I'm broke. Is there an easy job where I can earn more than $1,500 a day? Sandra and her team did manage to find her a position, but it was nothing like what she had envisioned. The company was a harsh environment where many employees lived in dilapidated shacks serving as dorms. Workers toiled day and night in physically demanding roles, with even older employees pushed to their limits. My mother-in-law found herself working to the point of exhaustion. The dormitories were surrounded by barbed wire, giving the place a grim, prison-like feel. Employees were blindfolded and transported to and from work in vans, leaving them unaware of their location. She'll be free once she pays off the debt, if that day ever comes, Sandra said with a wry smile. Despite being a dear friend, I couldn't shake the fear I felt for my mother-in-law under such harsh conditions. Weeks passed as my mother-in-law became entrenched in her grim new routine. When Arthur returned home after finishing his overseas assignment, I filled him in on everything that had transpired. He simply replied, there's nothing we can do about my mom. We can only wish her well from afar. It was clear that Arthur had never been close to her. While he had tolerated her due to familial obligation, her constant suspicion and meddling, especially towards me, his wife, had worn down his patience. When I asked Arthur about the supposed evidence photos of my infidelity, he seemed almost forgetful, casually pulling a photo from his bag. That's Sandra, right? I have no clue why my mom would think this is proof of cheating. I had a big argument with her over the phone. I told her to stop accusing you, Alice, but she wouldn't listen, he shrugged, a mix of frustration and amusement in his tone. I thought this was a nice picture, so I brought it home. Indeed, my mother-in-law might have unintentionally discovered a knack for photography. The image she took of Sandra and me, with a lovely backdrop, had a certain artistic quality, almost like it belonged in a chic photo album. It was amusing to see Sandra playfully flashing a peace sign behind her back in the photo, so typical of her. We owe Sandra a great deal for her support during this ordeal. We should visit her properly sometime soon. Just be cautious about signing any documents she might try to give you, I joked with Arthur, laughing. He replied, I'll never sign anything from Sandra. It felt refreshing to share a light moment after everything that had unfolded. Finally, Arthur and I settled into our lives as a newly liberated couple. We hadn't heard anything about my mother-in-law since she disappeared into her new job. She was likely still laboring somewhere in the States. We could have asked Sandra about her whereabouts, but neither of us was eager to track her down. Arthur and I continued to enjoy our lives, blossoming beautifully as we welcomed our first child. Those days were genuinely joyful, filled with the happiness and peace that came simply from being together. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video, stay amazed.